Welcome to the new podcast, Cancer Simplified. My name is Duncan Darrow, and I will be the host for this program. I'm the founder of Fighting Chance, and for 22 years I've run the charity, which is the East End's only free cancer counseling center. At our clinic in Sag Harbor, we have a staff that has included oncology social workers and clinical psychologists. They have provided over 5,000 free counseling sessions to East End cancer patients who feel the disease is eroding their mental health and their emotional well-being. The goal of our podcast, sort of like our free counseling, is to simplify what cancer is all about so that the disease will be easier for patients and caregivers to understand, not to mention the general public. In most circumstances, the medical experts who are available locally at Stony Brook Medicine can provide the highest standard of care, but there are a few times, really just a few, when patients must travel to specialized treatments in New York City cancer centers. Last year with our partner Hampton Jitney, we provided this transportation in many cases. And so with that, let's just get started. Welcome back to Cancer Simplified podcasts. In our first episode, we explained that cancer is a disease that begins in human cells. In today's episode, we're going to discuss the X factor, which refers to very valuable information about a patient's cancer, and yet that information often is not obtained as part of developing a patient diagnosis. The X factor information is obtained from a test that costs only about $1,000, and you would think that every oncologist, just to be prudent, would order this up. But for about half of the patients with major cancer types, lung, colon, and breast, that workup never really gets accomplished. And the vital information about the X factor is never obtained. Who knows why? The test I'm referring to would sequence, that's a fancy word, a cancer patient's genome. In many cases these days, what the oncologist orders is a truncated version which only analyzes the panel of perhaps 30 genes that are known troublemakers, known to cause cancer. As scientists examine a panel of these genes most commonly associated with cancer, what are they looking for? Well, they're looking for genes that are imperfect, that have been mutated, genes that no longer perform their assigned tasks. And by the way, a sequenced genome is simply a scrambled group of letters, CAGT, over and over again. That's what a gene is all about. And why is this treasure hunt for mutated genes so important? It's because these genes are what causes cancer, and medicine may have a chance for an intervention that snuffs out the worst behavior of these troublemakers. For example, here are two genes that almost always get mutated and cause a lot of trouble. Something called TP53, which when healthy produces a protein P53, which acts as a brake on cancer cells proliferation. Sounds good. But once it's mutated, it does the opposite and encourages a cancer cell to grow and expand at much far faster rates than you might think. And then KRAS, that's another mutated gene that plays a crucial role in cell growth and survival. When mutated, these genes contribute to uncontrolled proliferation, growth, and survival of cancer cells. We hear a lot about the phrase personalized medicine, but what does it really mean in the context of treating cancer? Well, what we've just been discussing is a good example of personalized medicine. That's because our hypothetical cancer patient obtained a gene sequencing test, a classic example of concierge medicine. And then the tests showed 2 seriously mutated genes, and the oncologist was in a position to search for new drugs to block the cancer-causing influences of those genes, those troublemakers. This is a long way that you might call basic drug intervention for cancer, which is chemotherapy and radiation. So, in other words, most of you in our audience have heard about chemotherapy and radiation, and we will talk about them later. But the mechanism of action for intervening with these mutated genes is very, very different. They're aiming for different targets with different rates of success. So, what about hope? We finished talking about a new way of treating cancer developed over 25 plus years. When cancer patients hear about breakthroughs, however, they see that science is still working to crack the code, still working for an all-out cure for cancer, even if the treatment has to be personalized, meaning tweaked based on just the one individual's unique genes. After I've told the story or two about seeming miracles of personalized medicine, patients always want to hear more. Tell me more about what might be hopeful. Another scientific advance I like to talk about with patients goes under the heading targeted therapy. Many of the most inspiring stories include a relatively new drug called Avastin, and it's a monoclonal antibody. Avastin falls into a new category of drugs as targeted therapies. In the case of Avastin, the drug's targeting the blood vessels that run all along the surface of a cancer cell and deliver the nutrients the cell needs to survive. By inhibiting that process, the drug Avastin chokes off the life supply, the blood supply to that cancer cell, and it dies. Kind of miraculous. There's that music again, which means we're coming to the end of this podcast. By all means, first of all, visit our website, fightingchance.org. At the top of the homepage, you'll see a podcast button. Press it, and you can gain access to this podcast and all the other podcasts that we've prepared. The homepage also lets you click through to other services of Fighting Chance, which are available to residents of the East End of Long Island. For example, there is counseling appointments to help patients get through the highs and lows during the battle with cancer. There are free local taxis to get you to cancer-related doctor appointments on the South Fork. There are free Hampton Jitney tickets if you need to see a specialist in New York City, such as Memorial Sloan Kettering. And there's also a free local resource guide, about 25 pages, that we produce in partnership with the American Cancer Society. If you have any questions about what we've discussed in this podcast, please email them to admin@fightingchance.org, and we will try to get back to you individually or answer your inquiry in the next podcast. Oh, there's that music again. Time to go. Hope you tune in again to Cancer Simplified, brought to you by Fighting Chance.